Welcome back, everyone. Let's dive right in. Under the hood, we have everything wrapped up with the exception of the filter mount. I'll go ahead and get that done later. Having trouble finding something suitable for that use case. We have everything tied up, the wire for the coolant, temp sensor, all the other wires go up, hide up underneath this distributor cover. We have the relays and the inline fuse and everything else kind of hidden back here. The wire is coming down, dropping off at the battery. Got all the vacuum connections hooked up or plugged. The wire continuing in through the firewall. That's all tidied up using some of the existing wire harness clips. Ran into some interesting developments here. When the throttle was hooked up, everything felt great. It moved nice and easy. But once the car was running, you would have a significant amount of pressure to get over the initial 5 to 10% throttle, making it very difficult to drive smoothly. Turns out I had to remove a linkage and get a shorter rod here connected to the secondaries. Once this puts it at a 40% throttle before the secondaries kick in. From the factory, it was instantaneous, so you had your primaries and your secondaries opening at the same time, which created a much stiffer pedal, probably due to some kind of vacuum forces in the butterflies. Not 100% sure on the physics behind that, but made it very difficult to drive. And with this little $10 linkage rod I got off Amazon, that made the problem virtually go away. To maintain the PCV connection that would connect underneath to the air housing, the factory air housing, I had to buy an additional 1/4 inch ring that will lift up here, which you'll see here in a second. Adding this ring gave me enough clearance where we can keep everything factory in terms of location and connection for the PCV hose. So that was pretty critical. I had actually purchased the base plate from Holley, and it did not have this port, and there was really no way to modify it to allow for this. So this is actually the best way to do it. It was about another $10 or so part that gets inserted in there, raises this up about 1/4 inch, and still allows for the hood to close and everything, no clearance issues. So no modification to the PCV, everything stock. With the air cleaner in place, everything looks pretty stock. You can't even see the Sniper unit underneath at all. Only a few keen eyes may notice a few extra wire connections coming out. With everything in the loom here, it's pretty low key. I'll probably add some more on that red wire over there. But basically, low profile upgrade, keep everything stock looking, and if I ever needed to or wanted to, I can go back and put the carburetor back on pretty easily. From the inside, I've gone ahead and got the fuel gauge hooked up in the back. Basically disconnected the 2-pin plug and hooked up the new yellow wire that was coming from the trunk. Pretty straightforward there. I do not have a coolant temp sensor gauge now on the dash, which is kind of a shame. There's nowhere to put a secondary temp sensor without drilling something out on the Gen 1 small blocks. I had to install a power switch here for the unit. Since there was no ignition power line that I could pull off of that would keep power during the starting process. So once you actually try to turn it on and hit the start for the starter, there was no available line that would keep power continuously. So that would actually cause this unit to shut off during the startup, which you can't have. So this is wired directly to the fuse block. It could, in theory, be left on at all times if I forgot to switch it off and kill the battery, but I really don't have any other option. Right now I have the screen mounted on a windshield mount. Probably won't leave it there forever, but it's useful for the time being. I may rewire it and either put it in the glove box or at the very least rewire it so this cable is on the other side of the dash coming out and it's not in the way. But for the time being, it's useful. You can get all of the information you need: temperature sensor, throttle position, RPM, The air-fuel ratio, which is kind of nice to see that it's running at the appropriate mixture as opposed to God knows what it was doing when it was on a carburetor. Bit of information, a little issue I ran into when I had originally programmed this and took me a while to figure out. When I went into the wizard, I had the correct model, which is the top line here, selected, and I went down and I hit next. And it had actually jumped to a different model, hit next, and moved forward. I didn't realize what had happened, and I continued on, and I had everything set up as I expected. After idle, since it thought it was a larger model sniper unit, it was running in all sorts of performance issues. It just wasn't running very clean. Lots of random issues. So I went back, checked everything out, realized what had happened, fixed it, and everything's been running great since. Gonna fire it up here. Let's get the power on. In the background, you can hear the fuel pump priming. Give the screen a couple seconds to start, and we're good to go. Right now the car is 100% cold. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Keeping a pretty strong idle for being cold. I found the idle holds pretty well, much better than would be on a carburetor. It doesn't really require that time to be in choke. Alright, so we're idling in the driveway here. It's been running for a few minutes. Just about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. RPM bouncing around 750 where it's set to, plus or minus 50 RPMs. The air fuel is going around just around mid-13s or so, which is about right. You can see the battery voltage, the duty cycles, the MAT, the map. Throttle position at the top right there, which is 0. We're just sitting here idling. Got all of our gauges minus the temp sensor working correctly. Alright, let's go take this for a cruise. It sure feels like a nice day outside. So that finally wraps up this project. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or comments. If you've enjoyed my videos so far, please subscribe to my channel. After a few hours behind the wheel, I can say I'm more than happy with this upgrade. The car runs much better, and I can only presume much more reliably. See you on the next project.